You have no meaning in this house anymore. Those words came from my son, calm, deliberate, as if he were reading a grocery list. He didn't shout. He didn't even look angry. He just looked done. The living room was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. My daughter-in-law shifted on the couch, crossing her legs, her smile polite but satisfied. The lamp cast a hard light across the floorboards I once sanded with my own hands. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even sigh. I simply stood there, hands trembling slightly against the leather strap of my old watch. My chest felt hollow like a church after the congregation has gone home. In that silence, I realized something colder than rejection. They had rehearsed this, but what they would never know, the ones who thought they held all the power, were the ones destined to pay the price. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Arthur, my daughter-in-law, said finally, butter smooth, as if she were offering tea instead of eviction. We don't want this to become dramatic. I turned my head a fraction. The edges of her words were soft, but the message was steel. Mara, I said, and tasted how quiet my voice was. You've never liked drama. Caleb, my son, kept his gaze on the far wall. There was a framed print we'd hung together the previous spring, a map of Lake Superior with shoreline etched in blue. His jaw tightened against the glass reflection. Dad, he said, let's keep this adult. We've talked about the situation. There was a thin manila folder half hidden beneath 3 magazines on the coffee table, Architectural Digest, an old Cabela's catalog, and a glossy brochure for a resort in Scottsdale. The manila slipped out just enough for a black scrawl to peek like a bruise. Arthur Reed. I watched that scroll the way you watch a fox appear at a tree in. Casual, inevitable, calculated. What situation? I asked almost gently. You know, Caleb, said the arrangement. Since Mom passed, since you moved in, it's time for better support for you. We found a great place. A facility. Mara cut in with a small apologetic shrug. Not a facility. It's more like community living, game nights, chef-prepared meals. You'd have your own space. My watch ticked against my wrist, a metronome only I could hear. Old leather brass buckle, my father's initials faint on the back. I steadied my hands. This is your decision, I said. Together. Caleb nodded once. The lamplight carved new lines into his face that hadn't been there when he was 12, and asked me if the Tigers would finally make the playoffs, or 20, and called from college to say he'd landed that internship in Arizona. Lines come from choices. Some of them you inherit. Some of them you draw yourself. What happens to my room? I asked. What happens to my tools? We've made space in the garage. Mara said a touch too quickly. Caleb cleared a shelf. And sweetie, she turned to him as if I weren't there. We can call Gary about the truck. The truck, I said. The F-150, she replied. It's old, Arthur. It's not safe for you to be driving something that size anymore, but Gary might give us something for it. I looked at my son. He looked at the map. The words no meaning don't hurt like a cut. They sink. They tilt the floor under your shoes. They rearrange the furniture inside your chest until everything is a stranger. They also sort time into before and after. Before my son rehearsed my eraser after I learned the choreography on the coffee table beside my name, a yellow post-it note was stuck like a small flag. Notary at 7:00 p.m. 7 o'clock glowed on the stove clock in the kitchen. 2 hours. It was needed efficient. They'd set an appointment to make my absence official. Let's not decide everything tonight, I said. Mara smiled again. It didn't travel to her eyes. We already found a spot, Arthur. They held it because Caleb explained your background. She gestured vaguely at my knees at the small cane propped against the bookshelf. They're willing to take you as early as Monday. And the paperwork, I asked. My voice stayed level steady as the tick behind my skin. She reached for the manila folder, slid it free with practiced care. Just a few signatures, she said, tapping the corner square. Power of attorney for health decisions, so we can act fast, if when you need help. And she glanced at Caleb. A housekeeping thing about the house, since you co-signed on the refinance last year to simplify the title, so we can handle bills without bothering you. A housekeeping thing. I looked at the edge of the form peeking out. I've seen a lot of forms. Sometimes the important word is small and easy to miss. Quit claim doesn't shout. It sits quietly and waits. Caleb shifted. Dad, this is for the best. We've run the numbers. We're already covering groceries and electricity and subscription services you don't use. Mara added, we're not trying to be unkind. It's just you're not contributing and emotionally. The word caught in her throat like an almond. It's not healthy for the kids. They didn't have kids. That I realized was rehearsal talking a script for an audience that hadn't arrived. Maybe the notary. Maybe the neighbor who would join for moral support. Maybe the version of themselves they preferred to imagine caring adults making hard choices for a difficult old man. The hum from the refrigerator pressed a little louder, as if electricity itself wanted to fill the silence. The house breathed air conditioning, cycling on a baseboard creaking as the evening cooled. This is what a home does for you if you let it. It gathers. It holds. It is a chest for the things you can't carry in your hands. My son, who was born with colic and slept only when I drove him around the block at 3 o'clock in the morning, was now a man with a laminated insurance card in his wallet, and a wife whose hair never fell out of its bun. He believed in systems. He believed in signatures. He believed he'd found the form that could convert a father into paperwork. I'd like some water, I said finally. If you don't mind. Nobody moved. So I did. I walked to the kitchen, and let the small ordinary act be a lever that pried the room loose from me. The switch flicked. Fluorescence woke with a faint buzz. I reached for a glass and watched my hand be my father's hand for a brief second, veins like blue road skin announcing itself honestly. I filled the glass and didn't drink. From the doorway, Caleb hovered. Dad, don't read too much into how this sounds. His throat worked. At least that was human. We have to draw lines. It's what families do. Families do 1,000 things. They draw lines. They erase them. They move them around when the paper changes. When I think of family, I think of a red wagon in our first driveway, of strep throat at midnight, of a science fair model that wouldn't stand until I used fishing line. I think of my late wife Ruth crying quietly in the pantry after her diagnosis, because she'd broken a glass in the sink and thought I would think she was weak. Lines, I said. Sure, we'll give you a minute. Mara called from the living room, and then we'll go through the forms together. The notary will be right on time. Don't worry. I already texted him our address again. Our address. It lived in more than one place, that phrase. It lived on envelopes from the county treasurer. It lived in the file drawer I kept in the back of the closet behind a folded blanket. It lived too in a deposit box on main third drawer, second key, because I never learned to trust memory more than paper. I carried the water back to the living room and set the glass down on a coaster I made from a slice of our old maple tree after last year's storm. Coasters are little promises we make to wood. We won't scar what holds us. Let me understand, I said, and sat on the edge of the chair with the armrest my Labrador used to chew when thunder rolled. You want me to sign a power of attorney to you, both of you, so you can make medical choices for me. You want me to sign a quit-claim deed to remove my name from your title, and you want me to move to a community living facility by Monday. That's correct, Dad, Caleb said. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I replied. Not unkindly. It's okay, if that's what you want. Say it how it is. Mara drew a breath that made her shoulders rise and fall with choreography. We want what's best for you and us. Boundaries, Arthur. She tilted her head a little. You always taught Caleb to be decisive. He's being decisive. The thing about advice is that it ages. It either becomes wisdom or it becomes evidence. I'd said those words once. Yes, at a kitchen table with a math worksheet between us and a coffee stain creeping toward the edge. Decisive means choosing the right answer when you're afraid of getting it wrong. It had not meant to remove the throat that feeds you. All right, I said. I let the words sit unadorned. All right, Caleb repeated, blinking. He hadn't expected that. Not yet. I'll look everything over, I said. I don't sign things I haven't read, and I don't read when I'm thirsty. I lifted my glass finally, and took a slow drink. Water metallic with the faint taste of copper pipes, older than Mara's patience. You can leave the folder here. I tapped the coffee table. I'll bring it to the dining room when I'm done. Mara glanced at Caleb. He nodded and nudged the folder forward with 2 fingers as if it might bite. We'll be in the kitchen, he said, retreating like a deer that heard a twig snap wrong. When they were gone, when the refrigerator's hum reclaimed the house, I opened the folder. I moved pages, not like a man doing what he's told, but like a carpenter measuring twice. The quit claim was on top. Beneath it, a pre-filled healthcare directive with boxes already checked. Do not resuscitate was mercifully blank. A third packet, this one surprised me more than it should have, was a consent to allow the community to manage my mail. I didn't feel anger, not the loud kind. What I felt was a clean border come into focus. On my side of it, memory labor, a mortgage payment made on the first of every month because that's how you let people know you're steady. On theirs, a plan designed to be efficient, expedited by a notary who would smell like wintergreen gum and leave a blue stamp on my table. There are different kinds of power. The no-less one is paperwork prepared ahead of time. The older I got, the more I understood that. When Ruth got sick, I learned to keep folders in duplicate, one at home, one away. When Caleb bought this house, I learned to read the fine print on a refinance and insisted my name stay where it had always been. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I understood that trust and prudence aren't enemies. I closed the folder and let my eyes land on the family photos along the stairway wall. The staircase had a slight creak on the third step, always had. In the photos, time had a way of curving back on itself. There was Caleb at 6 bowl cut, and a gap-toed smile holding a bluegill he swore weighed 5 pounds. There was Ruth in her navy dress, sunlight in her hair. There I was, younger, wearing a tulle and die-cap sawdust on my shoulder. I tried to see the line between then and now. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe it had shifted under our feet while we were busy doing dishes. I rose, my knee complained, then settled into quiet. I took the folder with me, not because they'd asked, but because I needed its weight in my hand. In the hallway, I paused and placed my palm on the wall where the paint never quite matched after we fixed a leak in March. The plaster felt cool, as if the house were a body, and I could still find its pulse. In my room, the back bedroom with the window facing the maple stump, I sat at the small desk Ruth had insisted we keep because someday you'll want a place to write. The desk had 2 drawers,